This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Okay, itong mga nakaraang araw po, tumitindi po ang mga balita tungkol sa umiinit na sitwasyon daw, kumukulo ng sitwasyon dito sa South China Sea, West Philippine Sea. However, itong lahat na to hindi naman natin maintindihan ang kabuuan kung hindi natin ilagay sa konteksto ng ating mundo. Many things are going on, and we've asked again our panel of analysts on global affairs, geopolitics, economics, nang mailagay natin ang sitwasyon ng Pilipinas sa lahat ng mga nangyari. Tama ba ang ginagawa ng pamahalaan natin, ang Department of Foreign Affairs natin, ang media natin tungkol dito sa mga foreign issues, foreign-related issues natin. So we have Chito Sta, Romana, the most senior among us, and sandwich in between the two seniors is the most junior, Richar Heydarian, and Hiro Vaswani, our regular in-house economics and financial analyst. Ang unang tanong kasi ang pamagat natin, RP in a new global order. Meron bang new global order na nangyayari na? Ano? Is this a fact? Or is this just a flash in the pan, itong mga nakikita natin about China, Russia, and so on? Or things are really congealing into a century of change in global relationships. Chito?
We're moving, or a new global order is emerging. Ang isang...
Nakataga na ba yan sa bato? Yan sa question. No.
Hindi pa settled. No? Ang nangyari, dati kasi, from the end of the Cold War, meron tayong unipolar world, no? Unchallenged yung supremacy ng Amerika. Ngayon, sumulpot, no, na mga bagong powers. You have the rise of China, challenging American supremacy, particularly sa Asia-Pacific. Then you have the emerging powers, no, the BRICS. And then you have Europe in crisis, Japan in crisis. So it's a multipolar world order that is...
Is this good or bad for everybody in the world?
It's neither good or bad. It's happening.
May mga debate, lalo na sa mga Amerikano.
Ang question is, how do you maneuver in this situation? No?
Well, one way to measure whether it's good or bad, is it good for peace or is it bad for peace? Kasi yun alam mo naman.
May debate dyan
Oo nga.
Some people say na you have peace, si Kissinger, kung merong hegemony or balance of power. And then the counter narrative is that the moment you achieve power parity, mas malakas ang potential ng gera. I agree more with a formation of a balance of power could lead to peace, no? Kasi although there are different schools of thought, pero the way we're moving, ang future ba, what will happen kung yung tinatawag nating Pax Americana, no? Na ngayon parang in decline, will it be a Pax Sinica, China, no? Pero the Chinese claim they don't want to be a hegemon. So is it possible, at least in the Asia-Pacific region, to have a concert of powers? No? Japan, India, Indonesia, South Korea, ASEAN. That, and the US becomes just another power. Hindi siya yung dominant power.
Richard, tatanggapin mo ng US from your reading of the US? You have many people that you communicate with there.
Are you suggesting anything?
No. You understand the US better than I do, for example. But tatanggapin ba ng US yung balance of power, or they will push for their hegemony in the 21st century. And the sign that some of them at least want that hegemony is the Asia pivot. Parang, uy, naiwanan natin na Asia. Balik nga tayo with 60% of our military forces. What do you think?
Right, I think many Americans equate order with American hegemony. I mean, those two things go together, especially among foreign policy hawks. My fear is, I'm critical of hegemony in whatever form, whether it's Sinica, it's Britannica, or Romana, or whatever. My fear is we're moving towards a global, new global disorder. And I think yun ang sinabi ni Richard Haas, yung head ng Council on Foreign Relations. And this is very true. I think the relative, if not absolute, decline of U.S. is more or less certain. I mean, that's really happening. Everyone is catching up.
But this order for an American is order for the other perspectives in Asia, Middle East.
This is the issue, no? I mean, for me, what we're entering is it's an age of grievance, no? I mean, the Russians are trying to reassert their influence within their sphere of influence. That's why you have the mess in Ukraine. You have Russian planes scrambling, you know, British and European NATO planes. In the Middle East, you have not only ISIS, but also like former powers like Iran are reasserting themselves. And here in East Asia, of course, China is also trying to reassert. I mean, it's all about China dream, isn't it, reasserting? So it depends who you're asking. I'm sure for Russians, for Chinese, for some countries in the Middle East, they feel finally they have a time to redress historical mistakes. It's not only China which had a century of humiliation. Iranians had 200 years of humiliation from 18th century to
India 20th. India. I will ask Hiro later.
Right. And then Russians, they feel that finally under Putin, at least some of the Russians feel, they're redressing the mistakes of Gorbachev and Yeltsin.
Russians, 25 years of humiliation naman.
Something like that, yeah. So you have 100 years, 200 years, and 25 years. So for them, I think for some of the nationalists there, they're quite happy. But for smaller countries around the region, you talk to countries like Kuwait, like Qatar, I'm not sure they're very happy about the decline of U.S. Talk to Philippines, I don't think they're very happy with the decline of U.S. Talk to Ukraine and Baltic states, they're not happy. So it's a case-to-case basis. But I think outside the flashpoints, like in Africa, like major parts of Southeast Asia, Latin America, I think they're welcoming this new order. Finally, the South Americans can move forward without thinking that the Americans will dictate what they should do. Now Obama is even reaching out to Cuba. Finally, we see a movement there.
We're going to ask why this is happening, because this is a shocker for some people.
Sure.
Well, I have other questions to pursue, but let's listen to our Filipino-Indian naman. Filipino-Iranian, Filipino-Spanish, Filipino-Indian. Mamaya, Filipino-Chinese, but I'm supposed to be the moderator. I should keep quiet.
Well, looking at it from the economic, then political point of view, when a very high official, formerly of the U.S. government, with the stature of Lawrence Summers, says that the date when the U.S.
What was the former position of Lawrence Summers?
Treasury
Secretary of the U.S. Okay.
And he was slated to be the next Federal Reserve Chairman. When he said that when the U.S. basically failed to prevent their closest allies from joining the AIIB, the international bank organized by China, he says that will be the date in history when the U.S. basically ceased to become the underwriter of the global economy. He further stated that the economic architecture of the world needs substantial adjustment. And he pointed the blame squarely at the unilateralist actions of the U.S. government. Now, this is strange coming from a former high official of the U.S., but he has accepted the fact that the rise of China and the other BRIC countries have caused a major realignment in economic and political fortunes going forward. And other analysts have seen the U.S. as in a state of self-denial about the realities of the global order. The U.S. has mismanaged and blew up the economic architecture that they themselves established in 1944. 1972, the Nixon shock. 1985, the Plaza Accords. 2007, 2008, the blow-up of the world's financial system.
Well, that seems to summarize the entire economic history and financial history of
Bretton Woods,
since Bretton Woods.
And that is basically the U.S. economic financial architecture.
So even in the financial economic architecture, changes are forthcoming. There are two actually fingers raised. Si Chito first a while ago.
Hindi,
I
kasi
noted. Then we go back to Richard.
Yung tanong mo kung will the U.S. will they
Accept it.
accept it? No, I think the U.S. in principle will not give up its supremacy. No, it's kaya yung Asian pivot is to try to maintain. But at the same time, you have the rise of China and other forces na challenging it. The question is, does the U.S. have the capability and the will? Overstretch siya. It's a usual case of a big power, no? Na after a while, imperial overstretch.
But isn't
kaya pa ba niya? And then it's his own political gridlock.
But isn't that how they're addressing it by withdrawing and leaving to Saudi Arabia and the new NATO in the Middle East? Ano?
Solution niya.
Yun ang solution niya. Will it work, Richard?
Yeah, on the AIB thing, I'm thankful that you raised that point. Actually, I've written a number of columns on that on Al Jazeera. One I'll write for Yale University later on. Later on, literally. No, the AIB is extremely crucial thing, but I think it's a reflection of how American global hegemony is actually taken hostage by a number of radicals in the U.S. Senate. I think if, for instance, remember in 2010, there were supposed to be the U.S. Senate was supposed to ratify certain reforms in voting shares of countries within IMF and World Bank. I mean, it's ridiculous. China has the same voting share powers as some mid-sized European countries.
Belgium and Netherlands.
Right, exactly, which doesn't make sense at all. I mean, Netherlands' GDP is $1 trillion. China's almost $9 trillion. So those reforms, actually, Obama administration agreed to. But the U.S. Senate failed to ratify that. So this really angered a lot of people. Now, I think this is one thing. You have a number of radicals undermining U.S. position. The second thing is the fact that existing institutions like ADB and World Bank do not have the financial capacity to cover existing costs. So the ADB itself projected $8 trillion of infrastructure spending need between 2010 and 2020, and there's no way that ADB and World Bank can cover that. So China, which has $4 trillion in foreign exchange reserve, is in a perfect position to offer something. So I think it was logical for other countries to say, why not allow China to come in? And they felt that the U.S. Idea that because China will not, follow standards on environmental and governance, issues, we should not move forward. So I think we have to keep those nuances in mind when we talk about the AIB.
Well,
issue.
if the world were to be allowed to follow economic and financial, the economic and financial drive, it seems there won't be war, and there will be a new arrangement. As the economic analyst here, do you think that will be the case? Will the U.S. allow economics to? They're now pushing the TPP to take away a bit of the market of China.
Essentially, the U.S.
1 minute, then we take our break.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The U.S. is basically relying on being the sole military superpower. That monopoly.
No
of
longer
power,
economic.
No longer economic.
No longer economic.
They have lost that, and they realize it. And that's why they have made this attempt at the TPP. Right now, they are in bilateral negotiations with the most important Asian country outside of China, Japan, trying to convince them to join the TPP.
Yeah.
That TPP is essentially containment of the economic strength of China. It is directed directly at the dirigist economy or the state-led economy of China.
Versus the TPP's corporate-led.
Corporate-led. It is completely private sector, corporate-led.
Okay.
And there is one aspect of that TPP that everybody should understand. They want international dispute arbitration for corporations.
That's right. Okay, we have to take this break. Part 2 will be the geopolitical earthquakes, and part 3 will be, is the Philippines stuck in the Cold War? Okay, we'll be back.